Hi, good people from all around the world. This is Nick from Mobile Let's Plays, and today's video I'm going to be talking about my thoughts and feelings on the new Palworld game. There's a lot of controversy to this new game. It's sold. There's many people playing this game, millions and millions of people, and there's basically two sides to this controversy. On the one side, there's the people who love Palworld, love that it's invigorated the basically done what Pokemon's done, but better, and that Pokemon has been stagnant for a long time, and this shakes things up. And there's people that are saying that, Palworld has copied Pokemon to such a degree that it should be followed with legal action, and that they don't really like Palworld because it's basically this. There's allegations that there's AI generated copies of Pokemon, basically. And I've seen some of the pictures, and some of them look kind of alike, but some of them don't really look all that much alike. Not like exact, like influenced maybe, but not exactly like it. And if I can think of get some pictures, I'll show you guys on the screen now, and I'll edit it in the future. I'm kind of torn on this myself because I've been a fan of Nintendo back since Super Mario World back in the SNES. I go that far back. And I've been a fan of Pokemon all the way back to the show when it first came out. And Pokemon Snap, I think, was the first Pokemon game I played. I also played Pokemon Red and Blue and Pokemon Stadium. I started to play Pokemon Stadium too, but even then, I could tell that they were kind of running out of ideas, and the designs just weren't that original anymore, or that creative, or that great anymore. It's just, I could tell they were running out of ideas, and that was in second generation. And I know to some people that might be controversial because I think they're way ahead. I haven't kept track on Pokemon ever since Pokemon Stadium 2 was where it pretty much just died for me. Like, it just wasn't fun or interesting anymore. And I know it's been going on for many years since then. And so for me, like, Pokemon was getting stale back then. I can only imagine now. And so there are some things I agree with and some things I disagree with, and it's a very nuanced thing. I'm not all in one camp or all in one. I'm not on either side completely. I see both points. I do think Pokemon has kind of had almost a monopoly. There are some games that have come out, but none as big as Pokemon since Palworld in that genre. And so I think shaking things up and making things more interesting. I've seen some clips of Palworld, and it's basically like the Fortnite type style as far as the visuals go and how you move and stuff. It looks like Fortnite, and I've never played Fortnite, and I don't intend to. I've heard it be compared to Ark Survival as well as far as the survival crafting. I'm a big survival crafting fan, and a lot of the channel is actually survival crafting content. Every once in a while I'll want to play like Resident Evil games or whatever, but for the most part I try to focus on survival crafting. And I've been meaning to play Survival Ark. That's one of the ones I've been wanting to play. There's so many good survival crafting games that I haven't played, but that's a whole other thing. And that's why I'm tempted to play Palworld, because there's so many people playing it, and it's a survival crafting game, and I think it might do well. But on the other side, if they are genuinely not just inspired, but directly copying with AI generation like it's been alleged, this is alleged, this is not for sure yet, and it's still very early. It came out in January. January's not even over yet, and there's already all millions of people playing it, all this controversy, all this buzz involved with it, and it's barely been out, not even a month yet. And I think it's hard not to be derivative, but if you transform something else someone does and make it your own enough where it's your own thing, then I think that's okay to a point. It's just where on the spectrum, how far in the spectrum of, oh, this is inspired, but I've done it in my own way, versus directly copying homework and making it type of thing. And one example of this that I thought would be relevant is Stardew Valley is one of my favorite games. I love Stardew Valley. Both me and my wife do, and it's an amazing game. It's one of the best farming simulator games of all time. I think it's the best one out of every game I've played. And Eric Barone, who made Stardew Valley, was heavily inspired by Harvest Moon. Now, if you look at Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley side by side, you can see the influence, of course, but they're different enough. He's done his own spin on it and made it his own enough where it's not like, oh, you couldn't distinguish the two. But then there's a game called Super Zoo Story that someone made, and if you were to look at, I'm going to try to zoom in so you guys can look at it or click on the screen. But if you were to look at this, and this was infamous when it came, freaking ad. This was, another ad pops, darn it. Alright, but I'm going to try to crop just this part out so you guys just see the picture. But if you were to look at this in Stardew Valley side by side, it would be really difficult to say which one was which. Like, if you didn't know Stardew Valley all that well, and you were like, oh, this is part of 1.6 update, and you didn't know that Stardew Valley that well, you'd be like, oh yeah, there's going to be pandas now in 1.6 Stardew Valley. And that clearly lands more on the spectrum of, oh, copied homework, this is almost exactly alike, it's hard to distinguish between the two. And this is not me to throw shade on Super Zoo Story or to say that they tried to copy it, but I'm just saying it's sort of a thin line between being inspired and copying something, and how far does it have to be copied for it to be a bad thing too. And this was controversial when it came out. I remember when this came out and people just hated this. And the people that hate Palworld are, a similar thing where some of the Palworld creatures look similar enough to Pokemon to some people. And like I said, once second generation happened, I just wasn't interested in Pokemon anymore. So the future generations after that, like if you showed me one that was inspired by Pikachu, I could see. There's one that's actually looks a lot like Electabuzz. And if I can remember, I'll put Electabuzz and that side by side. You can tell it's kind of inspired. But then there's one that allegedly says, I can't remember the person, but allegedly says it's like literally they copied over it like a trace almost. So I don't know what the right thing is really. Nintendo, there's some things I don't agree with that Nintendo does. Like Nintendo cracks down on modders, not just people who did the Pokemon mod of Palworld, but just modding in general, which I don't agree with. I think people should be able to make mods within reason, as long as you're not doing anything that's incredibly offensive or anything that breaks the law, anything like that. Breaks serious laws. And then also with emulation too, there's some games that you can't play unless you have it either on a ROM or on a N64. One of these examples is Hybrid Heaven. To my knowledge, they don't have Hybrid Heaven on the Switch online. I don't think they do. They have some of the most popular games like Donkey Kong Country and stuff like that, and that makes sense why they would be against ROM hacks or ROM ones like that, because they can actually make money off of it and everything. But when it comes to games like Hybrid Heaven that are not on the library of games that you can buy, the only way to play Hybrid Heaven is either by an N64, in which case Nintendo's not making any money anymore because they don't circulate those games. If they still circulated those games, if the games were still in the market for them to make money off of, that would make sense. But they don't have any skin in the game to be like, oh, we would have made money on this if you hadn't emulated it. And that's something I disagree with Nintendo about. Like, it's like if someone did like Tears of the Kingdom and they did an emulation of it, that makes sense because they could make money off of it. So there's some things with Nintendo I don't agree with and don't like. And although I am a Nintendo fan, I am not a blindly following Nintendo fan. It's good to be a fan, but not to be blind to the faults of that fandom. I don't think that's a good thing. And it's okay to admit that there's flaws or faults or mistakes in the fandom that exists. I think that's part of essential for a fandom to survive, is to be able to point out, hey, this is wrong or this is wrong. and not be so blindly following, like you have to justify every single thing because you're part of this fandom. And I haven't liked a Nintendo game since 2014 when Mario Kart 8 came out. I played Breath of the Wild, and I wanted to like it, and I kind of liked it to a degree, but I never finished the game because it was just didn't feel all that much like a Zelda game, and there was so much to do that, and it wasn't fun after a while, and I just stopped. And I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom now, and I want to finish it. Like, I don't want to give it up like I did with Breath of the Wild, but it's just not that great of a Zelda game to me, and I want to do a review on it one day. But it just doesn't have, like, the old classic dungeons that... Basically, all the mistakes and all the flaws that Breath of the Wild had, I had such high hopes that they were going to fix that in Tears of the Kingdom, but they didn't. They had... I'm not going to ramble on about that any further, but basically, there's a lot of things about Nintendo that I don't like or don't agree with, and I haven't been a big fan of Nintendo in that regard for quite a while because of those issues I presented. But it's that kind of thing, does two wrongs make a right? You know, just because Nintendo content has been kind of stale and everything, and they don't seem to appreciate their fans. Like, the people who follow the Zelda timeline, they're like so invested in the Zelda timeline, and then Nintendo's like, oh, we don't care about that, basically. And they came out with Hyrule Historia, but then, you know, with Tears of the Kingdom, they're like, oh, we don't care about the timeline, basically, and this is at the end of the timeline, and then they don't really care. They don't seem to, at least. And so hopefully Palworld, the good thing that I generally don't believe that two wrongs make a right, but at the same time, competition is a good thing, I think, and they've had such a big monopoly. No game of that similar genre of Pokemon has been as big of a competition and has shaken Nintendo as much as Palworld. And so there's part of me that feels, if it wasn't for the allegations of the AI generative copies allegation, I would be all for Palworld. I would be like, yes, thank God, finally they're shaking things up and they're making things different. And that's my hang-up with being completely on Palworld's side, is the potential that could be true, that they just directly ripped it off and not anything at all. And that's where I'm really against the Palworld side. But for the most part, I'm more on Palworld than Nintendo. That's the only hang-up I have, really. So part of me wants to play it, but part of me wants to wait and see if they really did copy Pokemon or not. Part of me feels like I'm going to be missing out on something if I wait, but part of me feels I should wait just in case if they did copy, and I don't want to encourage that if they're directly ripping off Pokemon. But Nintendo hasn't been Nintendo for quite a while, in my opinion. It hasn't been as good as it used to be. And then I don't think they care about their fans as much as they used to do. But that's just my opinion. But at any rate, I appreciate you guys watching. And let me know down below what you guys think about the whole Palworld controversy. I might include some of the articles and things in the description. They have done an official statement, and this is the statement that they've made. And if you want to, you can pause and read it for yourself. I'm not going to add more than a half more length to the video, but you can pause it if you want to and read it. So it's interesting. It's barely been a month. It's not even been a month. It might be sometime in February before it's a month that it's been out, and it's already all this crazy stuff. So yeah, that's pretty much my feelings. I'm very conflicted. I'm hoping the best case scenario that I can hope for is that the AI generative allegations are not true, because there's not any that are so exactly alike. You could tell that they're influenced to a degree, and I might include like some pictures and comparisons. The most like one I've seen is Electabuzz versus one of the ones that's holding the gun, and it's yellow and black, and it looks kind of like Electabuzz, but not quite. That's the closest example I can see. Um, but some people will point out, oh, this is exactly like this one, and it looks similar, but not exact. Not like as if you traced it exactly, on there, which is one of the main allegations. But that's the other thing too, and this is the other part I almost forgot to talk about. I'm kind of rambling, but the challenges of AI as ChatGPT and stuff like that comes out, like things, image generation software like DALL-E as an example. There's a couple other ones I just can't remember them off the top of my head right now. But as a challenge as an artist, that stuff like this can happen and potentially happen. It's still alleged. It's not 100% confirmed yet for sure. But that stuff like this is going to be one of the challenges going forward in many industries and many, as an artist in any field, that you could just type in a thing and it'll create, the AI is going to be a problem, and it's going to be a double-edged sword in a lot of ways. It's going to be good and bad, and it's going to be interesting to see going forward how this affects our lives as people and as far as the population goes and everything. It's going to be interesting to see. But that's pretty much my feelings and my thoughts on the whole thing. If I'm being optimistic, and my best hopes is that it's revealed that it is not exactly traced copied over, it's not AI generative copied over, and that it's inspired by it, but it's not quite exactly, and Nintendo can't find any fault of copyright infringement with Palworld, and that it shakes it up and it brings real competition to Nintendo, and it makes Nintendo not quite as stale, especially the Pokemon games, and it shakes up Pokemon and what Pokemon is and everything. That's what I would hope for the best case scenario. Worst case scenario I can think of is it's still in this gray area where you have these two camps and they're just constantly arguing and nothing ever gets settled. And then the second worst case scenario is it does find that there's copyright infringement, and they did do the alleged AI generative copy of the models from Pokemon, and it is found to be a fraudulent type game. Then that would be one of the other worst case scenarios I could think of. But I'm really hoping in any kind of case that this lets Nintendo know that that fans want better and more different things from Nintendo than what they're making, and that they're not happy with some of the things that Nintendo is doing. So I'm hoping that no matter what case scenario, I'm hoping at least that gets through to them. But I've rambled enough, and I hope you guys have a good day, and thank you guys for watching. Bye, everybody. Oh, I've also released a poll. I might include it here at the current results right here in this corner over here on the right. But thank you guys for watching. Bye, everybody.